Hello and welcome back to the Atlas Agency's continuing investigation of the Path to Carcosa cycle for Arkham Horror the card game. I'm your host Brandon. A Phantom of Truth is Mythos Pack number 3 in the Carcosa cycle, and in this player card rundown, I'll be talking through each of the pack's 11 new player cards. Hope you enjoy! As I mentioned in the intro, there are 11 cards in this pack. The Seekers get 3 new cards, and each of their class gets 2. We'll start with a bang, literally, with I'll See You in Hell. This is a zero-resource Guardian event. Each non-elite enemy engaged with you is defeated. You are defeated and suffer 1 physical trauma. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. It's got 2 combat icons, and the flavor text says, "He flicked open the lighter and made his peace." From a flavor standpoint, I think this is a fantastic card. It's a cinematic moment lifted straight out of a movie. The hero blows himself up so everyone else can escape and tries to take as many bad guys down with him as he can. I even really like the flavor text on this one. So from that perspective, I think it's a great card. From the gameplay perspective, though, is the card actually that useful? I'm a little doubtful on that front. I think part of the problem is if you do use this, you may take out several enemies, but you've also left your team without their guardian for the rest of the scenario. Depending on the makeup of the rest of the team, that could leave them vulnerable to any additional monsters that they draw as they try to wrap things up. Maybe if you're already on your way down, then it's nice to at least clear some enemies out as you go so other people aren't forced to deal with them. This probably gets better the more players you have, with more people potentially drawing enemies. And if you're really committing to it, then you probably want to run Taunt as well to have a way to quickly engage as many enemies as you can. I do think it's nice that this has double combat icons, so in the majority of games where you don't really need to blow yourself up, it's still going to have a use. That makes it easier to justify including the card in the first place, maybe in place of the Overpower skill. If nothing else though, I hope that you got a good laugh out of the card when you first saw it. Our other Guardian card in this pack is an upgraded version of 45 Automatic. 45 Automatic was originally a level 0 card in the core set. You can see the original version on the left here. On the right, we have the new level 2 version. This one has an additional combat icon added to it. It also gives you +2 combat for the attack instead of just +1, and you get to ignore the retaliate keyword for the attack. I mentioned in the rundown for the last pack that the Carcosa cycle has been adding some cards that support firearm weapons, both directly and indirectly, so it's nice to get an upgraded version of one of the game's basic guns. This is the first card that offers protection from retaliate, and I think that that's kind of neat. For most Guardians, though, I think I'm still more inclined to upgrade my 45 Automatic into a high-level weapon, like a shotgun or a lightning gun, rather than this. There is one current investigator who I do think will find this useful, and that's William Yorick. Yorick is limited to Guardian cards up to level 2, which cuts him out of those high-end Guardian weapons that I mentioned. So this card offers him an avenue to upgrade his weapons, something he couldn't do before. It's not quite as useful as one of those 3 damage weapons, but I think it's still worth having. Moving over to the Seeker class, their level 0 card is Logical Reasoning. This is a 2-resource event. Play only if you have at least 1 clue. Choose an investigator at your location. That investigator either heals 2 horror or discards a terror card from his or her threat area. This is an interesting multifunction card that I think works particularly well for Roland Banks. That first option, heal 2 horror, is nice for him because of his low sanity of just 5. If you're an actual Seeker, you probably don't have quite as much need to heal your own horror, but the card does work on other investigators, so if you're being escorted around by a mentally frail fighter, then it's still a good support tool. Option 2 is to use this to discard a terror card from a threat area. There are a good number of treacheries that have the terror trait, however, only a small number of those actually end up in your threat area. In the core set, it's just 2, Dissonant Voices and Frozen in Fear, both from the same encounter set. Dissonant Voices actually prevents you from playing events, so Logical Reasoning won't help you with your own copy of that treachery. However, you can still clear a teammate's Dissonant Voices. Usually, though, I'm content to wait that one out. Frozen in Fear, though, can be really nasty, especially for low willpower characters, so I really like the idea of having an additional way to deal with that card. On top of those 2 cards from the core, there's 1 terror in Dunwich, Unhallowed Country, which I don't think is too big of a threat, and so far 1 more in Carcosa. The third option for this is the 2 willpower icons. If nothing else, that suggests a way to carve out space in your deck for this. For me, I think it'll be replacing the Guts skill in my Roland decks. The next two cards are both evolutions of the card Archaic Glyphs, untranslated from the Path to Carcosa Deluxe box. That card followed the pattern that was laid down by Strange Solution in the previous cycle. It gives you a side project you have to complete during a game, and has you make a campaign log note when you do. Once it's done, you get to upgrade it to a new and more powerful card, so it's basically just an extra hoop that you have to jump through to get to use those cards. We've had Archaic Glyphs since the Deluxe box, and in this pack we finally get to see what it leads to. This time it's just two different options, both of them spell assets, so let's take a look at them. Both of these are level 3 spell assets that cost 2 resources. They've got the text, "You can only include this asset in your deck by upgrading it from Archaic Glyphs untranslated, and only if, quote, you have translated the glyphs in your campaign log." They both come with 3 charges. The Guiding Stones variant has you spend 1 charge and an action to investigate. For every 2 points you succeed by, discover 1 additional clue at your location. Then there's the Prophecy Foretold variant. With that one, you spend a charge and an action to investigate. If you succeed, you may automatically evade an engaged enemy. This action does not provoke attacks of opportunity. I really like both of these options. One of the issues I had with Strange Solution was that one of its upgrades felt much stronger than either of the others. Archaic Glyphs does a much better job of making both options exciting. If you're a seeker and you're going to pick up higher education, then Guiding Stones could work very well for you. Higher ed is going to make it really easy to pump your intellect up high to grab those extra clues. But if you're more concerned with dealing with enemies, maybe you're playing solo, then Prophecy Foretold is solid as well. It basically lets you evade using your intellect, though you're testing against Shroud and not the enemy's evade, and you also don't miss a beat investigating while you're doing that evasion. And with the Book of Shadows from last pack, Daisy gets to add charges to these using her tome action, so I think these are really strong. Technically, we've had some signature cards and encounter cards in the past that were spells, but these cards are our first true non-mystic spell cards. 2 of our mystics, though, have special deck building rules that let them pick these up. Marie gets spell cards level 0 to 5, and Akachi gets cards with charges level 0 to 4. Both of them also get occult cards level 0, which seems to be just for the purpose of being able to take the level 0 Archaic Glyphs. These aren't a good fit for Akachi. Unlike most spells, they don't change the test to use the willpower stat, so you investigate using intellect just like normal. So with her intellect of 2, these aren't going to work for her. Since they're spells, she can use Grounded to boost the test, but still, you're really going against the tide if you're doing that. Marie Lambeau, on the other hand, I think can make great use of these. She's got an intellect of 4, and they play nicely into her ability to take an extra spell action each turn if there's a Doom in play. I'm excited to try these out with her, as well as with the other Seekers, and I do think these are the highlight of this particular pack. Our first Mystic card is Quantum Flux. This is a level 0 event that costs 1 resource. Shuffle your discard pile into your deck and draw 1 card. Remove Quantum Flux from the game. This seems to be a must-have card for the Dunwich campaign, and if you've played Dunwich, then I think you know why. Outside that context, I don't think I see it as being all that valuable. I've yet to think of anything really exciting that this card enables. It can give you a chance at getting extra uses out of some of your more valuable cards. If that's your aim, then you probably also want a way to dig those cards back out of your deck after you reshuffle. Something like Calling in Favors, or No Stone Unturned, or Arcane Initiate, depending on what you're after. Note that the game does already have you shuffle your discard pile back into your deck and take a horror anytime you would draw and your deck is empty, so there's already a built-in method in the game to reshuffle like this. That last part, removing Quantum Flux from the game after it's used, that's a lesson learned from Fantasy Flight's Lord of the Rings LCG. There was an event card in Rings' core set, Will of the West, that lets you choose a player and shuffle that player's discard back into their deck. That card became, and I'm quoting Fantasy Flight here, the backbone of every endless loop in the game, and after a while, to put a stop to it, they issued an errata to change the card to remove itself from the game after use. I think Arkham is naturally a lot more insulated against the worst of these types of combo shenanigans, both because it has a hand size limit, which Rings does not have, and because you have a limited number of actions you can take on your turn, but they're playing it safe here just in case. Recharge is a level 2 Mystic event. It's a spell, costs 0 resources. Choose a spell or relic asset controlled by an investigator at your location, and reveal a random Chaos token from the Chaos bag. If you reveal a Skull, Cultist, Tablet, Elder Thing, or Autofail symbol, discard the chosen asset. Otherwise, add 3 charges to the chosen asset, and it's got 2 willpower icons. Being able to refill a spell or a relic is really valuable, but the Chaos Bag part of this, to me, is just really off-putting. At least that's my initial feeling. There's a decent chance with this that you spend a card and an action just for the privilege of watching it flush your spell or your relic down the toilet. Now, if the asset was empty of charges, then maybe it wasn't doing you much good without that recharge anyway, but still, I think this is the kind of card that could easily leave a bad taste in your mouth, and I really just wish it had some other drawback that triggered on that Chaos Token reveal, like damage or something like that. Survivors pick up a new patron ally in this pack. They are the 4th class to receive one of these level 0 patrons over the course of the Carcosa cycle. Theirs is Madame LeBranche, or maybe it's LeBranche. She is a 2-cost ally asset with 2 fast triggers. The first fast trigger says if you have no cards in your hand, you can exhaust her to draw 1 card. The second trigger says if you have no resources, you can exhaust her to gain 1 resource. 2 health and 2 sanity. This card is a really nice complement to those Survivor cards that give bonuses when you have no resources. Right now that's Fire Axe and Dark Horse, though I wouldn't be surprised to see more of those in the future. To use Fire Axe as an example, it deals +1 damage whenever you have no resources. Now, if you spend all of your resources on your first attack with Fire Axe to get that bonus damage, then if you have to make a second attack with it, you won't have any resources to spend to pump up your skill. If you're a character with a low combat score, then without that skill pump, you may not have a high enough combat skill to succeed at that second attack. So the benefactors here would let you regain a resource between those 2 attacks so that you could afford another +2 pump for the second attack. She also helps you play the event Lucky alongside either Fire Axe or Dark Horse. Dark Horse builds do seem to be really popular, and this is a great fit for those decks, so I think this is a pretty neat patron. Survivors get a level 2 event called Snare Trap. This one costs 2 resources. When you play it, you attach it to your location. There's a limit of 1 per location. Forced, after a non-elite enemy enters attached location, exhaust that enemy, disengage it from all investigators, and attach Snare Trap to it. Also, as a second forced effect, when attached to enemy would ready, instead discard Snare Trap. I think this is kind of neat. It reminds me a little of Ambush from the last Mythos Pack, although this one does not work on elite enemies while Ambush did. But it's a proactive thing you can throw down to buy yourself a test-free evade when an enemy shows up. Note that spawning at a location counts as entering it, so it's not just for hunters wandering in, it works for the enemies that you're going to draw during the Mythos phase. For the Rogue class, we have a new level 0 event, Cheap Shot. This one costs 2 resources. Fight, add your agility value to your skill value for this attack. If you succeed by 2 or more, automatically evade the attacked enemy. I'm still trying to make up my mind on whether or not I like this card. Initially, I thought it was neat enough to try out. I was running through the Gathering with 2 investigators. One of them was Wendy, so I went ahead and threw this in. She used it to evade and damage the Ghoul Priest, which is basically exactly what I was hoping would happen. But I'm nonetheless starting to have some second thoughts on it. Yeah, you get to compress 2 actions, and you get to merge 2 stats to do it, but it's still just a 1 damage fight action, and if you don't succeed by 2, you don't even get that evade. Is that worth 2 resources and a card? I'm starting to think that maybe it's not, and that I'd be better served with another event. And finally, we have an upgraded version of Pickpocketing. You can see the original on the left here. This was in the core set. The new level 2 version in this pack has an extra agility icon over the original. It's now fast to play, and the ability has been updated to say, after you evade an enemy, exhaust Pickpocketing to draw 1 card or gain 1 resource. If you succeeded by 2 or more, do both instead. I'm not all that fond of the original Pickpocketing, but I think having it become fast is a really nice improvement. Now you need at most 3 uses to break even on this, and just 2 uses if you succeed by 2 at least once. That's not unlikely at all. At this point, I think the top user for this would be Wendy. She's likely to be evading often, and that extra card draw is especially useful to her since it powers her token redraw ability. For the other 3 actual rogues, I think it depends a little more on your particular build, but it's certainly a valid option. And that's it, the 11 cards in a Phantom of Truth. As always, thanks for watching the Atlas Agency, and if you're watching this close to the time it's posted, let me also wish you a Happy New Year. I think 2018 will be a great year for Arkham. We'll see the conclusion of the Carcosa cycle, probably all of the cycle after that, and who knows what else is in store. For the Atlas Agency, I'm currently working out the logistics of filming some live plays, so hopefully you'll start to see some of those within the next few months. Once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, good luck with your own investigations of the Carcosa cycle.